At the first level, you're just someone who tags along so you're seen. You're not truly one of them yet, but you're close enough to breathe the same air, close enough to feel like you belong. You walk quietly behind the older guys, a few steps back. You don't cut in, don't ask questions. You only watch. Who talks to whom? Who owes whom? Who gets restless when the shadow of a police patrol slips by? Those men barely notice you, and you tell yourself that's a good thing. At this stage, your goal isn't to shine. Your goal is simply to be seen walking beside them, like a sign that you have a connection. People usually don't mess with a kid who knows to keep his head down, who knows to hold distance, who knows to wear a curtain over his eyes so he doesn't look at what he shouldn't. Every now and then, one of them turns around, glances back like a quick inspection. Still there? You nod. Good. That's it. But to you, even that single nod has value. It says they've registered your face. And in this world, being recognized can mean, when something goes wrong, you might be worth pulling out. You don't make plans. You don't do anything at all. You just show up, day after day, proving you don't panic. You don't crack. You don't swerve when pressure hits. Your mindset is like someone trying to get accepted into a group. Just be persistent and don't cause trouble. You reassure yourself that one day they'll give you a job. One day you'll have a place. But for now, you follow. At the second level, everything comes with a clearer task. Now you hear a warning in your head. There's only one job, don't mess it up. They put you on a street corner or right outside the pub door. Wherever trouble shows up first, that's where you stand. You have to learn to watch nonstop, tight as a drawn wire. Your eyes sweep from the top of the street to the end of the alley, tracking uniforms, unfamiliar faces, people who walk a little too slowly and look around a little too much. One distant siren is enough to make your heart jump. Then you realize it's not coming your way. You exhale, try to keep your face calm. Inside, they're counting cash, talking business, doing things you understand you're not allowed to know. And that is the rule that keeps you alive. The less you know, the safer you are. Your job is to buy them time. If things go bad, you give the signal so they can scatter. You've never had to use that signal, and strangely, that's the best news of all, because it means you were alert early enough, you placed yourself right, you didn't let trouble reach the door. Hours crawl by, your legs go numb, the cold wind cuts your skin, but you don't move, you don't complain. In your head, a warped belief begins to form. Enduring in silence is loyalty. And you know that if something happens and you lose focus for even a moment, you're finished, not just finished with this group, but maybe finished out in the world too. At the third level, you become a runner. Folded papers, cash, small packets. You move them fast and you never ask what's inside. From a doctor's point of view, this is when your defenses grow strong. You learn to separate emotion from action. If you get caught, the person who doesn't know anything is less likely to slip up. They pick you because you're quick, and because you've memorized every shortcut through the dark back alleys. You're like a buffer between the top and the street. If the police grab you, the chain breaks right there. You carry the risk, while the men higher up stay clean. Once, someone you'd never met handed you a folded note. The back room of the barracks. Walk normally, don't run, don't look hurried. You took it and kept an even pace, like a kid just passing through by accident. You heard rumors a crew from the south side was asking questions. New faces showed up, testing boundaries, probing for weakness. But now people tell you it's not your business, not your turn yet. You deliver the note. The man in the back room doesn't even look at you. No thanks, no extra instructions. In that world, coldness is treated as proof you did it right. Deliver and go. Leave no trace. At the fourth level, you start hunting like a petty thief. Jacket pockets, wallets, half-open windows, empty homes. Whatever you can take, you take. Each haul isn't big, but it adds up. And every coin you bring back is proof you're useful. You stand in a pub near the factory, packed and loud. Perfect cover for this. A man at the counter is drunk, his coat hanging loose, his pocket practically open. You slide past like an accidental bump. Your fingers find the pocket, lift a few coins, and you keep walking without changing your rhythm. He doesn't notice. No one around him notices either. And that is the real skill. Not just taking, but taking so no one realizes they've been taken from. Outside, you overhear two men mention the South Side crew again. They just robbed a bookie across the river, stripped an entire week's profit. You frown. That means they're edging closer to your territory, but you've got money in your pocket and a cut you have to hand over, so you keep moving, forcing the unease aside. At this stage, a lot of people get used to shoving feelings down to the bottom, treating worry as something to swallow, because if it shows on your face, you'll be seen as weak. At the fifth level, you don't need finesse anymore. This is where it turns into confrontation. You take what you want and you let the other person know you're taking it. You step out of the shadows, look straight into their eyes, signal, don't make this hard. Most people will hand it over. They've heard what happens if they resist. A shop owner 2 streets over hadn't paid his share this week. You went with another guy from the crew. When he saw you from afar, his face turned white. He stammered that he'd have it tomorrow. He swore it. You didn't argue. You just stood there, silent, holding his gaze longer than normal. There's a primitive kind of pressure. An unblinking stare and silence make people scramble to save themselves. And sure enough, he rummaged and pulled out the cash. Strange how fear can make everything smooth to the point of absurdity. On the way back, you passed a pub where people were arguing. The South Side crew had hit another spot, closer this time, only a few blocks away. They weren't testing anymore. They were moving in. One of your guys spat on the ground, acting defiant, saying, "Let them come." You nodded on reflex, but you also noticed something new guys often miss. The older men didn't laugh. When experienced men go quiet, it usually means they're calculating something serious. There were whispers of a meeting, something big about to happen. The boss was calling people in. You weren't invited, not high enough yet, but you felt the air change, like before a storm. People talked less, watched each other more, and tension hung over every corner. At the 6th level, you become the hard hand. When someone won't pay, you make them pay. When someone talks too much, you make them stop. This is where the last boundary inside you starts to wear away. And from a medical perspective, it's when your nervous system learns violence as a tool, while conscience learns to go silent in order to survive. When rivals keep trying to push at your territory, you have to hit back hard enough that they won't try again. You carry scars on your body, but you leave more on others. Your fists are calloused from too many punches. Your nose has been broken twice, and there's something clearer than any wound. Whenever you walk into a room, conversations naturally drop and then die. People look at you not because you speak loudly, but because they know you're the kind of man who makes words carry weight. Tonight, it's the South Side crew again. You sit in a back room with 4 other men. A supervisor lays out the situation, voice steady but strained. The other crew didn't just rob a bookie, they beat him bloody, then forced him to work for them from now on. Someone speaks up. Find the guy who did it, and make sure they're found. You understand exactly what that means. In this machine, violence is the gear that keeps everything turning. Respect, territory, money. Without people hard enough to enforce it, everything is just empty talk. You've lived through this more than once. Competitors who think they can wedge in. Debtors who think disappearing ends it. Every time you handle it and the message spreads like fire, don't cross the line. But this time feels different. The South Side crew isn't a few opportunists. They're organized. They've got numbers. They've got their own hard men. And when a system starts encroaching, it stops being a minor clash. It becomes a straight road to conflict. You crack your knuckles, the sound dry and sharp. Time to work. But as you stand to leave, you catch a brief look exchanged between the supervisor and the boss. What's in their eyes isn't anger, it's worry. A kind of worry you almost never see in men who are usually steady about everything. At the next level, you're the operator. You don't personally handle every street job, but you control the systems that keep money flowing. Illegal betting rooms, protection arrangements, channels that move stolen goods through people who know how to make them disappear. You track what comes in, what goes out. You know who's skimming and who's still loyal. Numbers don't lie, and you read them better than anyone in the crew. Today, you're checking last week's take from a betting spot. The numbers look good. The horse races have been favorable lately. You've just finished writing when a runner bursts in, face pale. They hit a store, in broad daylight. Walked straight in, cleaned it out, walked out like the street belonged to them. You set your pen down slowly, as if holding your mind back from exploding. That store is yours. It has been for years, which means they stepped into your house. In seconds, your brain switches to cold calculation. How much can you lose before the whole system collapses? Which part is most vulnerable? If blood is spilled, who can you truly trust? You call in the hard hands. You inform the boss. This isn't just a robbery, it's a signal, a public slap. And in this world, that is a declaration of war. At the highest level, the boss. Every eye in the room waits for you to speak. You're behind the barracks, in your pub, on your turf. The operator sits across from you. The hard men line the walls. The entire system, everyone who matters, is here. This isn't a meeting to talk for fun. This is a meeting of people who understand that one wrong decision can erase years of building in a single night. You don't see yourself as a king. You don't need a throne. You're the one who settles conflicts, picks targets, controls revenue, decides which side your crew stands with and which it stands against. In a world where alliances are loose and loyalty can change with the wind, that is power. The South Side crew has been creeping in for weeks. At first, small moves, testing reactions. Now they've crossed the line. The daylight robbery of your store is an open challenge. If you don't respond, you're finished. Shopkeepers will stop paying because they'll see you can't protect them. Gamblers will shift their deals to someone else. Even your own people will start wondering if they backed the wrong man. You didn't inherit this operation. You built it, piece by piece, and you paid for it in blood. In that silence, memory returns like an old film reel. The day you were just a kid trailing behind older guys on these same streets, waiting for a chance to be given a task, pounding like a hammer while your feet still held their ground. And then, at some point, you realized you weren't afraid anymore. From then on, you climbed every rung. You crossed every threshold. You've dealt with rivals. You've survived crackdowns that scattered the crew for weeks. You've faced internal betrayal that nearly tore everything apart. Each time you found a way through. That's why they trust you. That's why they're sitting here today, waiting for you to speak. One hard man speaks up, voice firm. Just give the order. Tonight, we handle them. You shake your head. Charging in hot is the fastest way to lose everything. You look around the room. 40 men are watching you, to live and to earn. You take a deep breath, then speak slowly, clearly. We don't retaliate blindly. First, I want to know who's leading them. Who he drinks with, who owes him, and among the ones who owe him, who also owes us. I want to know where his money comes from and where it goes. I want to know his weakness, his habits, the places he gets careless, the corners he doesn't see. You step to the window. Outside, the street is strangely quiet, like it's holding its breath for an explosion. When we strike, it has to be the final period. One night, so they can't recover. But it has to be smart, and it has to be right. The room stays dead silent, then one by one. Heads nod. No cheering needed. They understand. Because they follow you not because you're reckless, but because you know how to keep them alive and keep money in their pockets. You look at the faces around you. The runners from back then are thieves now. The thieves from back then are hard hands now. The kids who used to hover on the edges now stand straight, ready to fight for streets they've bled on. All of this is something you built. Every channel, every relationship, every rule, every fear people attach to your crew's name. And you swear, no one gets to take it from you. You don't know exactly how the ending will unfold. No one does. But you know one thing for sure. No one takes what belongs to you without paying for it.